Started. So welcome everybody to this webinar on contractors hiring and how to never make another bad hire. And in today's webinar, I'm going to be talking with you about how to make a good hire for your business, how to avoid making bad hires. We're going to talk a bit about getting creative about how you find people. And we're going to talk about how do you create a system or a blueprint for being able to create a great hiring system and process within your business. And we will talk about the whole thing of, oh, there's a shortage of people in the construction industry, and how do you deal with that? I invite you to bring an open mind, because there's this big conversation about hiring and recruiting, that it's hard and it's difficult and there's nobody out there. And while I'm well aware of the condition of the industry and the challenges that we're facing as an industry in finding qualified people, I also have seen people make amazing hires in these last 5 years. And I'm going to share with you some of the ways that they've done that. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Vicki Suter with Suter Business Builders. And for over 25 years, I've been helping contractors build great teams. I've helped them increase their profitability, find more time in their day, and more joy and fun in what they do again. And part of that work and that body of training that I've done with hundreds of clients and hundreds of contractors is really around this whole topic of how do you build great teams, because your ability to be able to grow your business is directly related to the teams that you have. And hiring is like sort of the one first piece, right? So that's what we're going to focus on today. And how do you do that well? And how do you not make any more bad hires and build great teams? And I want to thank my co-host, Paul Sanneman with Contractors Staffing Source, who was co-promoted this webinar with me today. And at the end of today's webinar, I'm going to give Paul an opportunity to talk with you about Contractors Staffing Source, a company that I have recommended a lot, that is a really great resource for hiring and recruiting people. And how today's webinar is going to look is, I have the presentation that I'm going to do. I'm going to talk with you about best practices and how can you find people and how can you recruit well and how can you build great teams. We're going to talk about, I'm going to share with you a special offer at the end, a handout that will help you implement some of the things that I'll teach you and share with you today. I'm also going to share with you an opportunity to be able to take this learning to the next level, and a resource that I have that could really help you and really improve your hiring and recruiting process. And then Paul is also going to talk a little bit at the end about Contractor Staffing Source and what they do and how they can support you as well. As we go along today, you'll likely have questions, and I encourage questions. I love questions. And here's what I would like you to do is to please put your questions in the chat, and Rebecca, who is on my team, will capture those questions. And at the end, when I open it up for Q&A, then we will address your questions at that time. If it's really pressing and you're like, I really need clarification about this right now, just put it in the chat. Rebecca's going to be paying attention for it, and she'll stop me and she'll go, hey, Vicki, there's this question. Can you just stop and address it? So I'm happy to do that as well. And so before I begin and I launch into, I'm going to share my screen in a second. We're going to go through the slide deck. Before I do that, here's my invitation to you, is that hiring and recruiting and building great teams is much about having a good process as it is about having a good mindset about it. And what I've found is that having the right mindset about how you're approaching hiring and recruiting can make all the difference in the world. And what do I mean by mindset? What I mean is, if we have this head trash, what I call head trash, like that, that self-talk that happens in our heads, that head trash that says, it's really hard to find people. Good people don't want to come work for me. I'm too small. I don't offer enough benefits. The best people are working for bigger companies. It's just really hard. Nobody's out. Like, if you have all that running around, one of the things I say is, if we fight for our limitations, they're guaranteed to be ours. And while I'm very well aware, I've worked in this industry. This has been my specialty for over 25 years. I've been in this industry. I know it well. And I work with contractors every day. I understand the challenge, but I also will say is that when you have an open mind to seeing the possibility that hiring and recruiting there's a different way to do it than maybe the way that you've done it before, that can create more openings for great people to want to come work with you and for you, then your chances and your odds of being able to have great people on your team and to be able to hire the right person when you need them, who has the right skill set and who really can help you build your business and your departments and your company. It starts with believing that that's possible. So I'm just inviting you as we begin to start with an open mind. All right, I'm going to share my screen. Okay, that wasn't what I wanted to do. Okay. Sorry. Oh, I closed my PowerPoint. Hold on. Sorry, guys. Okay, here we go. Screen 2. Okay. So hiring with confidence as a contractor and how to never make another bad hire. That's the name of our presentation and our topic for today's webinar. So do you think that there are just not enough qualified people out there to hire these days, right? This is what we were just talking about a minute ago. Yes, there's a reality to that. Yes, there's fewer people available. Yes, there's fewer people going into the industry. And that mindset, I invite you to just stay open to the possibility of changing it. And do you feel sometimes like recruiting can take a ton of time with a little return? I totally can appreciate that. Like you're spending all this time doing outreach or interviewing. Today, we're going to talk about some ways to shortcut that process, ways to be more efficient in interviewing, ways to save your valuable time. And are you frustrated when you hire someone only to find out that they can't do the job? That's super frustrating, right? Like people say, I can do X, Y, and Z, and I have the skill set, and I've been a project manager and blah, blah, blah. And then you hire them and you're like, wow, like their version of project manager and mine, two different things. We're going to talk about that today and about how do you avoid that ever happening again and making those bad hires. And, you know, bad hires, let's face it, it costs you a lot of money. It costs you money in project delays, subpar work from employees, do-overs because of mistakes, right? We've all had that experience of doing that. And, you know, I know for myself that the thing about being a leader and managing people isn't something that we wake up with one day. It's something that is a learned and a developed skill. And I had to learn that the hard way in my early days as a leader and a manager. And I'm actually going to stop sharing my screen just for a second. You know, I faced all those struggles and I dealt with those difficulties myself. And it was when I was reading a book by Jim Collins called Good to Great. And it was like one of those light bulb moments where I was like, oh, I get it. Like I, first of all, don't have a really good system and process for how I hire people, and I don't have the right thinking about how to hire people. And so it was out of that learning and out of my own like struggle as a leader and learning to hire people and manage people that I started to develop a different set of practices that I implemented with clients. And what I'm going to show you today and share with you are those tools and resources that I have seen repeatedly are the difference that makes the difference in terms of how you approach it. Now, in this webinar, we're going to be able to address like the overview of it because we have an hour, and I will give you an opportunity later to find out more about how you can get those tools to actually create a system in your business. But let me go back to sharing my screen. So it's costly, right? And you know, all of the struggles of hiring and all those things, you end up feeling desperate to hire anyone who's got a pulse, right? Because you're like, gosh, like there's nobody out there. If somebody responds, I got a job, I got to run it, or you're losing money on projects, or you're spinning wheels in recruiting, or you're struggling to grow and make a consistent profit, right? It's tough because your ability to grow your business is directly proportionate to being able to build a great team around you too. And remember when it used to be like just so much easier, right? Like it was just a conversation and there were people available and there were more skilled people out there, and it was just easier to hire people because you knew other people. And you know, honestly, it's like when we go to work every day, we want to be able to work with people we enjoy working with, people that we like, right? We want to be able to get back to that sense of having that camaraderie and that know, like, and trust with the people that we work with. And you want to be able to have your hard work translate into profits on the bottom line, right? You want to not be working so hard and not making a return just because of the, you know, the turn and burn of employees. And so today I'm going to share with you the secret to having a good hiring process. And I'm going to show you how to stop the struggle of hiring great people. And we're going to talk about how to hire people that you can count on and trust in your business, so that you can find the, you know, fun and the joy in what you do again, right? So that you have that ability to be able to have more choices about how you spend your time, and that micromanaging people and having the wrong people on your team and spending time trying to chase after and find people isn't the thing that occupies such a large space in your day. And the key is to building great teams is starting with a good hiring process, right? That's one of the ways that we do that. And a good hiring process all begins with the right mindset, which we've been talking about, and a solid recruiting process. And just like when you're building a project that it begins with a plan, the same thing is true for when you're building, you know, when you have a recruiting process in place, right? So it's a system whereby you have a blueprint for building a great team that ultimately helps you build a profitable business. And so, you know, just like when you start a project, you don't like look at the kitchen and like the family room and the deck and then go, okay, they want to add a deck out here and they want to renovate their kitchen and they want to, you know, knock out a wall and push out that family room. You don't like go look at the job and then do demo and then go, all right, what are we going to do next? Right? Like you start with some kind of a blueprint or a schematic for where am I headed and what is it that we're building to, right? Like what's it going to look like when it's done? And so having that same approach to recruiting and hiring somebody in any position is really going to help you, because you already have that thinking, right? So what I'm encouraging you to do is to apply that thinking in your whole recruiting process. And there's 6 steps to hiring the right person for the job. And we're going to go through each one of these. But the first one is be clear about the skills and experience that you need. Like not more than just like it's a project manager, but actually defining what that is specifically for you and your business. And then thinking outside the box when it comes to recruiting, being willing to try some new things. We're going to talk about that. And we're going to talk about how to have an approach and a strategy for how you're going to do recruiting and outreach. And then not wasting time interviewing the wrong person, making sure that you have a screening process in place, and how to be a good interviewer. We're going to talk about that. Like, how do you make sure that you're in your interview process, you're asking the right kind of questions? And we'll talk about that. And then checking references and background. We'll talk a little bit more about that too. And then checking your gut. So those are those 6 basic steps. And I'm going to go through each one of them. So step number 1 is be clear about the skills and experience you're looking for. Have a job description that outlines the major responsibilities of the job that you expect the job to be, how you want the job done, and be clear about the specific experience and qualifications that you want in an employee and in that candidate. Now, this is critically important. I have to tell you, I have seen over and over again how people, when they have a really clear idea of what that position is, and let's talk about a project manager for a second. The word project manager means something completely different in $1 million company versus a $10 million company. And so when you know what you need for a project manager, and that criteria is clear, is really important when you go into an interview. Because I've seen a lot of times, and you probably have too, right? Like, how many times have you ever hired somebody and they say, I can do job X, Y, and Z, of foreman, project manager, carpenter, controller, whatever. And then you get them in that job and you're like, yeah, what I think that job should be, or that position should be, is this, this, and this. And they're like, oh, no, I do this, this, and this. Like, their perspective on what the criteria is for being successful in that job is completely different than yours. I don't know about you, but I totally have. And I've seen it again and again. So the more clear you can be about what is this position and what's the criteria for me and my business for that job, will really help you, A, attract the right person to being applying for the job. B, it will help you tremendously in your interviewing process. And C, you'll find it'll help you tremendously in your outreach. So what it starts to do is it starts to take the general category called project manager in this example and narrows it down to, what does project manager mean for me? Whether that's like, they can do scheduling, they manage the client relationship, they do cost to complete, they manage the budget, they do homeowner meetings, right? Like, whatever that criteria is for you, get it clear and get it in writing before you begin your recruiting process. Again, because you'll see it's going to help you tremendously in terms of making sure that you get the right person in the seat on the bus. My client, Peter, talks about, he says, the most small businesses struggle to understand the right framework for building the right staff, knowing what you need and the role that you need to fill and how to hire them is not easy. Vicki's approach has helped us in hiring great people on our team. And I'm going to share with you a few other stories as we go along of clients like this, but I've just seen that this process really works. And in this case, I remember when I sat down with Peter to do this initially for a controller position, and he had one thought in his mind. I had another thought in my mind about it. And as we talked about it, came to an understanding of like, all right, well, what do you really need in this position, given how you run your business? And that was super helpful, because now it started to really narrow down the field of all these people who started to show up as a potential controller to, well, this is what we really need. And it will really help you, especially if you're using a headhunter. So step number one, have a job description, a position agreement about what the criteria is. Step number two is be willing to think outside the box when it comes to recruiting. And step one of that is chart out what your outreach plan is. So it's sort of a mini subset of a blueprint for your whole hiring process, but have a plan for, all right, what's my strategy going to be? And we'll talk about some different strategies here in a minute, but it could be, you're going to do a headhunter, could be that you're going to place ads, it could be that you're going to do some outreach to other people, but have a plan for what your outreach approach is going to be. And then I encourage you to make sure to look at trade sites that are going to be supportive of your potential hire and your outreach, and then tell everyone you know. So I want to talk about those other pieces. This first piece of tell everyone that you know is, we all know that we like to work with people that we know, and that the more we can get connected with people who know that are associated with other people that we know, those are some of the best hires that we've ever made. I have asked this client this question repeatedly of people, like, what are some of your best hires? And they're like, it was a referral from somebody. It was my daughter's soccer coach's sister. It was, another parent from one of my kids. It was somebody who was referred by one of my employees. It was my CPA referred them, a subcontractor referred them, a supplier referred them. Like, the potential of outreach to find somebody is incredible if you're willing to do outreach and let other people know that you're looking. So what can that look like? It can look like letting your suppliers know. It can look like your employees, when they're on job sites, asking subcontractors or other general contractors, do you know anybody? It could be you sending out emails. And I know that people are hesitant to do that sometimes, but I've seen it create a huge, great results, in that you just send out a really simple email that says, hey, do you know anybody who's super interested in an opportunity to do this, this, and this? If so, would you mind just forwarding this email? Attached to the email is that one-page position agreement that tells a little bit about your company, and here's the skills that we're looking for. If you're interested, contact us. Contact information. Super simple, super easy. this has this whole thing of hiring people who you connect with through other people can be like, it gives you just such greater reach, and you get people who have a little bit more know, like, and trust, right? They're warm referrals, if you will. They're kind of like job leads, right? They're referrals. Those are some of the best projects that people do and we get. So I highly encourage you to be willing to do this. It's a great way to find great people. Institute an employee referral program. I have almost all my clients do this anymore, where they'll pay an employee a finder's fee of a certain amount of money. Hey, if you bring somebody in, we hire them, we're going to give you a check of anywhere between $300 and some cases $1,000, and sometimes they'll like split it up over a couple months or whatever. Your team wants to work with people that they can trust and that they like and they can count on. So they're a really great resource. I've seen that happen a lot. One client that I have, that they've built almost their entire team, couple clients, their entire team that way, that's a referral from their employees who know other people. There's always somebody who's unhappy in their job somewhere else, right? So your ability to be able to get employees who are ready for another opportunity. I'm not saying go steal people. What I am saying is that conversation that guy on the job is having with another sub or, a general, to go, hey, we're looking for somebody, or, meets a guy or a gal and they're like, yeah, they'd be really great to work with. Or, my sister-in-law's brother or whatever might be a perfect fit. So you never know. That's a great place. And then check vocational schools and colleges. This is a great way to find people. They are all, a couple of years ago, an associate of mine was looking for somebody. There was a trade school there in the county, and he hired this kid between his junior and senior year to come be an intern for them. And Rudy said, initially, like, he just really liked the guy. He was really helpful. Like, he wasn't really hitting on all, in a full-time position at that point, but he agreed to come back after he graduated high school, and he worked a bit, during the year. Well, he hired him, and Rudy says to this day, he goes, it was one of the best hires I ever made. I mean, that kid's been with us for a couple of years and he really grew. He had a lot of fire in his belly. So trade schools are a great, and there's more and more of them available these days because of the shortage of the construction industry. There are people who come trained, who have experience, maybe not experience, but they come with some training that at least helps you have a beginning, right? Now, those aren't people that are necessarily going to be your higher level hires, but part of our job in the industry these days is that we need to develop those younger people and get them into our businesses, because it's a very aging out industry. And so I think it's a really beautiful way. And I've seen lots of people who have done this, and not everybody wants to go to, college to get their degree in project management. There are a lot of people out there who would love this opportunity. The other thing I recommend is getting connected with your associations related to your industry, whether that's National Association of Remodelers Industry, National Kitchen and Bath Association, ASID, NKBA, whatever, wherever you are, there's probably an association connected to where your specialty is. We think sometimes, oh, well, it's just more of my, other people like me. They're not gonna be referring employees. They're not gonna want to give up their staff. I have to tell you, so I've been very involved with the National Association of Remodel Industry for years, and I've made some amazing connections with people who were looking for another opportunity, to people who wanted a position. One example in particular, I had a client who was looking for a senior project manager. And he said, do you know anybody like in your network or whatever? And I'm like, there's this guy that I'm on a board with who I think would be a beautiful fit for that job. I'll connect the two of you. You can see, like, he's not particularly happy in his position and where he is now, and this might be the great next, thing for him. And they ended up talking, and he ended up hiring him, and they've had this great working relationship for several years now. You never know who's going to know somebody. And I've just heard that story over and over again. So not necessarily look at it like, my competition's not going to give up their employees, but where can I make those connections and meet more people? And I will also tell you, it's just good for your business in building an identity and a reputation of giving people an opportunity to get to know you, which is also a way that people then refer people to you. So, okay, online posting resources, LinkedIn, and help from a professional. Let's talk about all these. Online posting resources. There are job site posting places that are specific to the construction industry. There are, things like, Monster and other, websites, job search websites that you can go to. Those are what I tend to call sometimes high hanging fruit, but sometimes they can be low hanging fruit depending on the investment that you're willing to make there. Posting on LinkedIn can be really great as a resource. I have a client who was looking for an office manager, had hired a headhunter. The headhunter was struggling to find somebody. I said, have you posted on LinkedIn? He goes, no. I go, post it on LinkedIn. Let's see what happens. He posted on LinkedIn. Somebody responded in 2 weeks. 3 weeks later, she was working for him. Great hire. So that can be a really good resource, especially when you get to a more management level position. And then headhunters, seeking out professional headhunters can be a really good resource when you're looking at hiring a more senior position. And Contractor Staffing Source, who is the host for today, has a unique way of doing headhunting for people that's not the traditional hire a headhunter. They charge you somewhere between 20 and 35% of the annual salary of that person. For some hires, that's really appropriate. Contractor Staffing Source has a little bit of a unique approach to that in that they will do a search for you similar to what a headhunter will do. And they'll actually do this really cool screening to see if the person has the fundamental thinking and approach that will help them be successful in that job. And then they serve that up to you. I'll let Paul talk more about that, but I really like it because it's kind of a hybrid approach to it. So those are some ways that you can do outreach to find people. And then once resumes start coming in, right, and you start looking, you want to not be wasting time interviewing the wrong people. And you want to have a phone screening process that lets you vet out the unqualified. And a phone screening process is one where you're going to ask them certain questions that will help you know, like, you're going to ask questions about the size of business that they worked for, right? If this is somebody who's worked for, an example I gave earlier, it's project manager, they've worked for a company that does $1 million a year, you're a $10 million company, that project manager position agreement is going to be different, right? Or somebody who says, you just ask them a question, tell me a little bit about what your day looks like, or tell me a little bit about, how you manage certain things. I recommend that you stick to like 5 questions. Don't make it a really long thing. Make it a 15-minute conversation. The idea is you want to just see, does it make sense for me to move forward with this person? If it's somebody who's in a position where they have to manage people, just tell me about, the people that you managed, when, how many, tell me a little bit about that. And then just shut up, which I'm going to talk about in a second, because the whole thing about like when you get to the interview portion and even in the screening portion, there's that whole, like, I want to tell people about us and what a great company we are and why they want to work for us. But you really want to get into the habit of asking good questions and then letting people talk. So screening will save you a lot of time and aggravation of interviewing somebody. You're halfway through, you've scheduled an hour, you're 10 minutes in and you're like that person is not a right fit. Find that out early. Like even if you do like a Zoom call with them or something like that. All right, now you've gotten them in and you're doing the interview. Key. Be prepared with written questions before you go into the interview. Ask open-ended questions and let the candidate talk more than you. So I'm going to go through each one of these. First of all, the job description we talked about a little while ago, or position agreement, that document, that 1-page sort of summary will really help you develop what are the questions I want to ask. You want to ask questions that are specific to what you know you want and need in that job of that role. And when I say open-ended questions, you want to ask questions that are open-ended in a way that you go, again, stick with the project manager as an example. Tell me about a time when you had to handle a difficult conversation with a client around a change order. And then just be quiet and listen. Or tell me about how you manage schedules, job schedules. Or tell me your approach to managing the job budget. What do you do? And then just be quiet and listen, like listen to, you want to get a sense of how do they think, what's their problem solving skills, how do they approach that? Like when you and get them out of the category, you know, sometimes like we ask people a question and then they give us a theoretical answer, right? Like it's not specific. So you want to kind of get them to drop down and ask questions like, yeah, okay, that's great, but give me a real example. Like, tell me about a job you're working on now. Tell me a little bit about that job. What are you doing? What's the size of that job? Like, what's it like? Like, you know, what's the scope? And then tell me what your average week looks like. How are you interacting with the job, with the client, blah, blah, blah. And you can tell if somebody like starts stumbling over what they're saying, that they're making it up. But like when we are thinking about a real example, we drop down and we answer from a different place, a place of experience. That's what you want to listen for. This is one of the key ways that you're going to stop making bad hires is by asking open-ended questions. This is so important to be able to hire great people for your team, is being really clear about your criteria for what is the skills and the qualifications that you need for your business for that job. And then B, learning to not talk through the interview. I had a headhunter once that said, she goes, like, the majority of the people who come back from interviews will say to me, gosh, like they talked more and they didn't ask me barely any questions. I appreciate that you want to talk about your business and how great it is to work for you. But if you want to know if that person's a right fit and that it's a right fit for both of you, because that's how I approach all interviews. I always go, it's got to be a right fit for both of us. It's not just about me kind of grilling you about, you know, can you do the job? So having an open approach to how you ask questions is really going to help them and you be able to know if it's a right fit. And give them the opportunity to ask you questions too, right? Like, what do they want to know? And I always invite people, I do a lot of interviewing for usually finance positions, because that's my original background was in finance and at higher level positions. And I always tell people when I interview, I always say, I look at this as a two-way street, that it's about you and I both getting clear if this is a right fit. So I'm gonna kind of grill you with a bunch of questions because I really want to understand how you think about what you do. So I always frame it in a way that takes away that discomfort of grilling somebody with questions, like, right? So like I just speak to it and I say to them, listen, I really want you to ask me questions too. I want you to lean into this interview process with a commitment that you want to be super clear also, so that you can know if it's a right fit. People will respect you a lot for that. And I have to tell you, I've had some amazing conversations with people where at the end of the conversation, I've been like, I really like you a lot. I think you're, you know, there's a lot of really great things about you. And I don't think this job's a good fit for you because we need this. Your experience is that. And you know, and oftentimes the more we talk, they go, yeah, I get it. It makes sense. You may be thinking to yourself, well, but maybe I'm not going to have like the ideal perfect fit. If you can accommodate not having the ideal perfect fit, all good. Asking those questions to know where the gap, because I say this to interviewees as well. I go, part of my questions is also to understand if there's a piece that you're not completely comfortable with, you don't have a great depth of experience with, we want to know that before you get into the job so that we can make sure that we set you up for success. We want to make sure that we set you up. If you don't have experience in one of those areas that we hold as critical, we want to make sure that we set you up for training in that area if everything else works out. You know what I mean? So it's like just talking through it, hugely helpful. It'll get rid of that discomfort for you if you just explain the process before you begin. And it also has the interviewee like show up more present to just being in an engaged conversation with you, as opposed to like, what's he going to ask me next? What's she going to ask me next? Like, is it the right answer? It's the wrong answer. It gets into it like more of just a conversation, which is a beautiful way to be able to really find out if someone can do the job. Step number 5, check references and background. So prior employment, references, credit check, background check, criminal check, prior employment and reference checks, critically important. I have found that I had a client once who was hiring a controller, and he called the previous guy that this woman had worked with. She was super smart and super bright, and everything on paper, you went, yeah, I think she would be great. And she had all the right answers to questions. And he called their previous manager, and he was like, yeah, she's really smart, but she runs on her own clock, and she's a little unruly, and she's gonna kind of do it her way. And I said, are you sure you really want to do that? Because I don't know that that's a good fit for this culture. And he goes, yep, I'm going to hire her. I'm like, okay. He hired her. And 6 months later, he was letting her go because she lived up to exactly that expectation. There was, it wasn't like she transformed in this job from the previous one, and it was not workable. So checking references, great way to find out information. Background checks, credit checks, especially if they're in a finance position, you will avoid getting embezzled from. And you don't want somebody whose credit is like horrible, who's managing your finances. Just not a good fit. That doesn't indicate a lot of responsibility. And then the last check is your gut check, right? After you evaluate one more time, what are their strengths and weaknesses? What do you really like? What do you not? Do they fit into the culture? And do you have any doubts? Having a matrix where you can evaluate everybody that you're interviewing is really helpful too, so that you can remember one candidate against the next and not have to like go back through all your notes and go, oh, is it, like, did they do this? Did they do that? Like trying to see it, having some kind of a metrics can really help. So trust your gut too. If they're not a right fit, they're probably not a right fit. So all of these are the blueprint. All of these pieces are the blueprint for having a great recruiting and hiring process in your business. And they are the thing that will help you start to have that plan and that blueprint for like, what am I building to? And what is it that I want to create in my business? It will help you do better hiring. It'll really help make the process much quicker. And that whole thing of thinking outside the box and looking and doing outreach in creative ways is really going to help you be able to have a greater reach in terms of potential candidates. And so, one question is like, if you could have all of that blueprint in one place, and be able to do it right the first time, would that be helpful? And with all of the tools and the great hiring system, like, would that be helpful if you had all of that in place, so you didn't have to create it all yourself, so that, really you could stop struggling to find the right person for the job and get your life back? And, my client, Nick, he talks about working with my hiring process has been a huge help to their business. The systems, the experiences helped us avoid hiring mistakes and building a great team. And that is where the Contractors Hiring Blueprint can be a resource for you. It's all about recruiting, hiring, and onboarding. And this is the piece where you have an opportunity in today's webinar. I want to share with you the Contractors Hiring Blueprint course. It's all around hiring and recruiting and onboarding, and giving you the tools to be able to do that, to be able to have a system for being able to find great candidates. So this first piece of the Contractors Hiring Blueprint actually gives you samples of position agreements and where to website references, specific website references for where you can find people. And it gives you examples of how to write a position agreement and how to really start to formulate that clarity for yourself about, all right, like, what am I hiring for? And then gives you the tool in specific questions to ask in that screening process, in that script, for being able to weed out the people who are not really a good fit. And interview questions. So I give you specific interview questions that you can ask to ensure that whoever you're looking at is really a good fit and can do that job. So it includes things like, what kind of questions you want to ask, and then what are you listening for, right? So it helps you tune up your listening for how to like just get into that groove of doing a good job when you're interviewing to make sure it's a right fit. And Mead, who I've worked with for quite a while, says, that there's a deep knowledge of hiring that's included in the contractors hiring blueprint, and that system has really helped them make a lot of really great hires. So what I'm sharing with you, and I share these couple of testimonials with you because you might be thinking, well, does the system really work? What she's talking about? It's great that she's got it, but does it work? Well, it does. I've used it with clients for years, and that's why I wanted to just share that. When you get the Contractors Hiring Blueprint course, you have access to it, lifetime access to it, of all the materials and the recordings. And it includes training videos, specific screening kind of questions, detailed interview questions and detailed interview process. It includes web resources for finding people, and I keep that up to date and update it. So I update it. If I get changes, I will put it into the portal. And then checklists and tools that you can use, including like evaluating candidates one against the other. I give you a framework for being able to do that. And my client, Steve, when he talks about knowledge and expertise on hiring, it is a skillfully crafted information that's super accessible, and it makes it, it's essential if you want to improve your lives and your business and your bottom line. Having a great recruiting process can help you. And Jenny talks about the systems and the approach for finding and recruiting the right person has continued to be an invaluable tool in growing her business. And she's just been hiring a lot of people in this last year, and she continually talks about how that's been super helpful. So the Contractors Hiring Blueprint normally is $497, but for a limited time, it's yours for just $397. So I'm making that special offer to you as a attendee here at the webinar. And I'm going to include a couple of bonuses here because I want to make sure that you have all the tools you need to be able to really be better at hiring. And that includes the 6 steps to writing a great job description that will really help you start to formulate that position agreement in that job description in your head before you go do your next hire. And I included a sample in there so that can kind of help you kickstart that. And you can go to contractorshiringblueprint.com and to get the course. I'm also including another bonus, which is onboarding best practices. So there's some training videos and some tools for onboarding employees. That's the whole thing of how do you make sure that they get up and running quickly and start to be productive in their jobs. This is a really great training that will help you do that as well. That's part of the Contractors Hiring Blueprint. So that brings the total value of it to $797, but I'm still offering it to you at just $397. All you have to do is put in 100 off at the checkout. And I will just say this offer ends on March 11th, so this Saturday. So the special price for you is good until Saturday. And you just have to put in 100 off at contractorshiringblueprint.com at the checkout, and you can get that special price. So just finally, again, it's got training videos, screening questions, detailed interview questions, detailed onboarding process, steps for writing a job description or position agreement, web source resources, as well as all those other checklists and tools. So as you said, I've been doing this body of work with contractors for over 25 years. I've been building this tool set for quite a few years, and I've been implementing it with clients over these years and have seen how it works. And so I'm very passionate about helping contractors make their lives easier and get to building the business that they wanted to build to start with, which is to be able to make the money you want on the bottom line, to have more time in your day and really love what you do again. And building great teams is absolutely your pathway to doing that. And especially now in a time when it's tough to find people, I really just want to have it be that it's an easier process for you so that you can get on with doing what it is that you initially wanted to do when you started your business, or get on to being able to be have more fun in what you're doing and be able to enjoy the fruits of your labor and not have it be all about the struggle. So I hope to take advantage of this opportunity. Again, if you put in 100 off, you'll get the special price of $397. That's good until Saturday. And I'm going to open it up for questions, and then I'm also going to let Paul introduce himself and talk about Contractors Staffing Source. But before Paul, maybe we can jump in. Rebecca, do we have questions?
Yeah, let's go for questions first.
Okay, let's do that. Rebecca?
Okay, let me go ahead and ask the first question. What have you seen work the best? Posting online, LinkedIn, Headhunters, etc.
It depends on the position that you're posting for. And I would say in terms of hiring people and finding people, one of the things I've seen has worked the best is doing outreach. So I'm just going to say that first, like asking for referrals from other people, whether that's your team on a job site or at the supply store, or sending emails to your friends, your associates, your professional network. If you're going to do online, then I'm going to say, again, it depends on what the position is. So there are some online resources, and this is included in the Contractors Hiring Blueprint. I actually talk about, there are some places where you can find temp to perm people that are good for trade, where they're a lower level position. That's a good place to be able to source people. Also, I would say that Contractors Hiring Resource has been a great referral for that I've made to clients for being able to, if you want a little bit more done for you, but not quite as done for you as a headhunter. If it's a really senior position, either something like Contractor Staffing Source or a headhunter, I would say, then you may want to reach out because they are going to tend to have a broader network. But Contractor Staffing Resource has been really done a good job in terms of building a team that can do outreach in some of the same places and in the same ways that a headhunter will do, but has also created this other screening tool that Paul will talk about in just a second, that has been really helpful in terms of making sure that the person can really be a right. It doesn't necessarily deal with deep technical skills, but it does deal with, does that person, in terms of their personality, again, I'll let Paul talk about this, but like have that disposition to do that job well. But yeah.
What I was saying is that we have this last year, I think we hired 400 people for 200 companies. We've got a 95% chance of finding the person, a 95% chance of them staying a long time. And that's partially because of the tool. We have a lot of screening we go through, and we normally go through 200 applicants to find a person. We through 75,000 applicants last year to find 400 people. To answer the first question, I guess do everything. It's like, how do I save money on a job? Yeah, right. I mean, you never know. I mean, it depends on what you're doing. So I would say clearly do everything you can do. And along with what we're offering, I'm willing to offer a thing on this too. That resource, which is an assessment that we have a lot of faith in, we've given it to thousands and thousands of people, and it really is. I'll know more about your mom in about 45 minutes. I'm willing to let anybody on this webinar have, a couple of them to use for free. It's only $200 a pop, but we would do it for free for anybody in this webinar that wants to send us a couple of people to assess. I also suggest you do it yourself, because until you have it done on yourself, you don't have a lot of faith in the instrument. But once you have this done, you get the assessment done. It's sort of a combination of a Briggs-Myers and DISC profile and a bunch of psychological stuff. It's got a bunch of AI in it. You go, oh my God, they knew all about that. I never met me before. If you can know all about a person before you even talk to them, it's really helpful. Also, the assessment has the right questions to ask, and it's really useful. And what we do is, again, we recruit for about 300 companies, the 100 at any one given moment. And the difference is we do a low monthly fee versus a percentage of first year salary. I believe the key to any successful company is building the team. Elon Musk is the richest guy in the world, not because he's really smart, but because he knows how to build teams, right? So to me, the most important asset you've got is building your team. You're no better than your team. I highly recommend that everybody, but this is no cost at all. Under $400, just everybody should just do it automatically, in my opinion. But I also think you should consider using someone like us because we'll do all of it for you. And the more you participate, the better it gets. But there's a reason we have a 95% chance of succeeding. We also have access to a bunch of stuff you don't like. We can search databases, we can search Indeed, we can search all this stuff, and you can't do that. But
Yeah.
I would say it's an option.
Yeah, and it's going to get you people in the door, right? And then the contractors hiring blueprints, the thing that's going to help you go, okay, now I have all these resumes. Now what's my next step? Like how to make sure they're a right fit. So it's a nice complement to each other in that way. Yeah.
And we will, and what we do, we have the people, we assess the people, we do video interviews. There's a whole process we go through. And the reason I just do this is most people don't do their electrical, they don't do their own plumbing, usually don't do their own accounting. So recruiting sort of comes under the same thing. I mean, we're really good at it. It's not that expensive. It's like a low monthly fee. I suggest you do that. We happen to meet with Interview on this, you know, they came to the webinar for free for an hour to tell you what we do. And we have some clients on this already. But as far as just having a resource for $400, not having that in your, just that you can grab and refresh doesn't make any sense to me. It's like, the cost of an average bad hire, we did some statistics, is about $50,000, give or take.
Yeah, actually I have data of 60,000. Yep. Yeah.
It's a lot of money. And,
Yeah.
and not, you know, it's funny because you look at, we work with a lot of companies. They said we have 300 work for. They usually don't have a marketing budget, which to me is crazy, but hardly any of them have a recruiting budget. It's the most important thing they do in the company, and yet it isn't even a line item on their budget. It's amazing.
Yeah, actually, that's been an active conversation for several years now with clients when we're talking about their operating. It's a very consistent line item on there in terms of recruiting and hiring. Because quite frankly, you know, you need to be doing it all the time. Waiting until like that last minute you need to hire somebody is what's really making it difficult to find someone that gets you desperate, that has it be like very like panicked at the last minute or somebody leaves. And the best contractors I know are continually recruiting. They are always looking for new talent. And they tell people when they interview them, listen, you know, we don't really have a position open right now, but we will soon. And I want to be in dialogue with you about it. And great hires sometimes just take longer to hire. But also sometimes I've seen happen too, is that clients will be in that continual recruiting process because that's just what they do. And they find somebody and they're like, oh my gosh, I got somebody on my team I'm so ready to let go of. I'm hiring this person.
Right.
So you never know when, but that's like, if you want to build great teams and you want to build a great business of A players, be in continual outreach and communication and networking and
Vicki and I both agree. You should always be marketing and always be hiring. Because if you have great clients, and you have great employees, this is an awesome profession to be in. But if you have marginal clients and bad employees, it's really tough profession to be in.
Yep, totally agree.
Any other questions?
Yeah, Rebecca, what was your other question?
The next question is, can you speak to using both situational and behavioral questions and how to use these types of questions best?
Can I speak to situational questions and behavioral questions and how to use those questions best? So situational questions would be like the example that I gave, which is you have a homeowner that you have to present a change order to, and you know it's going to be a bit of a sticky or difficult conversation. How do you tell me of a time when you've had to deal with that, and how have you prepared for it? And what's your what did you do? Like, how did it go? So that's situational. In terms of approach or thinking, I would ask questions like, I was sticking with the project manager example. Tell me about like how you, like, what's your approach? Well, how do you think about scheduling? What's your thoughts about scheduling? And then just listen. It will get like, it will have them say, well, you know, I think that it needs to be updated every week. Okay, can you just tell me a little bit more about that? Like, how do you approach it? Like, there's all the elements that jobs are always changing. There's always those changing factors. And you're listening for things like, do they pay attention to milestones? And what are they doing in terms of keeping in front of milestones? Are they updating it? Like, do they set it and forget it? Do they never, they never look at it again after the initial bid is done? Do they do it on a whiteboard on the wall? Like, what's like and if you're not clear, ask more questions. So you want to get, or even, how do you tell me about how you manage costs on a project? And then just listen, right? So it starts
Another one is, I highly recommend, we can do a lot of assessments and I can tell you whether the person is capable of the job, if they're smart, but as far as holding a nail gun or laying out a concrete slab, you gotta have them do it. I mean, I recommend you bring on the person for like a couple of days, see what they do, see how they actually perform, because until you actually see them do the skill, you're
Yep.
not.
Yep, good idea. Good idea.
I've got 2 more questions.
Yeah, okay, great.
How long do you recommend trying with a new hire that you aren't sure if it's a right fit?
30 seconds, just kidding.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, first of all, get better at interviewing them. That, like, so let's say if you've already hired somebody, you haven't had the contractors hiring blueprint, you haven't gone through this process, and you're like, yeah, I didn't ask all of those questions, and that would have been really helpful. I would say that don't wait. Don't wait. Like Paul just said, like 30 seconds. Like, if
Right.
that person is going to be somebody who's a liability to your job, a risk to your job, who's going to, who's just failing, a warm body, that person impacts so many other things besides just they're not really a great fit. Like, they're impacting the morale of that job, the speed of that job, the ability to be able to just functionally get something done. They're costing you money every minute that they're on that. So
the world's worst employee is someone who's not bad enough to fire, good enough to keep. They kill organizations. It's purgatory. And have been a coach for like 40 years, there's always the guy or the lady who, he's great, he's bad. He's great, he's bad. And literally can take a year to get rid of this man or woman. And when they finally let go of them, it's the best thing they ever did. But, when in doubt, throw them out. I don't know if that's a legal thing or not, but it just, at a gut level, it's not going to work. You just go with it.
Yeah.
All right, last question is, can we reach out to you with questions as we go through the course?
Yes. Yes. Most definitely.
So my recommendation is everybody should get this course because it's, in my opinion, that kind of money is almost free, just to have it as a resource. And I'd highly recommend you to reach out to us at Contractor Staffing Source to help you, at least we'll give you some free assessments. Look at it as an option because we have all the best practices. And I said, we pretty much find everybody you're looking for. In fact, my worst issue, and I'm still trying to fix it, is contractors look at hiring as a project, not as a process. So we went through 140 clients last year. I do all the exit interviews. Everybody left for the same reason. You guys are awesome. You found all our people. We're great. We'll call you back when we need somebody. I go, no. So I have yet to succeed in getting people to see it as an ongoing process. And probably Vicki hasn't done that great either, to get people to do it in an ongoing way. But, I can't say enough that it's all about your team. You're only as good as your team. And that's your greatest skill to keep your company going. And every resource you get, whether it's Vicki or us, to build that team is pennies on the dollar compared to your ROI on the company.
Yep.
Oh, and I see we got one more question too.
Right.
One more is, are the contractors that are hiring looking for interior designers?
Are the contractors that are hiring looking for interior designers? I actually know a number of contractors, general contractors, who are looking for interior designers.
Yeah. That we
Who are looking at doing, who want to be able to do design build in-house, or design build firms who are looking to add people to their team.
Right.
So
And I would say the people we recruit, that is probably the most popular was project manager. We recruit anybody from a laborer to, CEO, but we have different assessments depending on the position. But it is a popular position. to fill is a designer. A lot of people hire those people. And other people, think about hiring people out of your thing. I'm just gonna, one last anecdote. We've hired a bunch of killer selection coordinators that used to be wedding planners. Just think about it. A wedding planner has to get a bunch of flaky people at the right place at the right time and make everybody happy. It's just like a contractor. So we've been very good at, maybe thinking a little outside the box to make it happen.
Yep. Good. We are straight up on the hour.
Thank you.
Yeah, Paul, thank you. Everybody, thank you for being here. Again, if you go to contractorshiringblueprint.com, you can put in $100 off at check. That's good until Saturday. And by all means, go check out contractorstaffingsource.com to go check out and get your free assessment and find out some more about their services. I think that you'll find that these two things are a really nice complement to each other in terms of your hiring and recruiting. And thank you. Thank you all for being here today. I really appreciate it. And we wish you all the best. Feel free, by the way, if you want to email myself or Paul, you can email me at Vicki@suiterbusinessbuilders.com, Vicki and SUITER businessbuilders.com. If you have questions and you want to find out any more information, and then you can reach Paul at Paul. Where can they reach you?
I put the link into the chat as well, but Paul at contractorstaffingsource.com.
Okay, great. And Rebecca, maybe you can just pop my email into the chat as well. And the link in there is still in there for both Contractors Hiring Blueprint and also for Contractor Staffing Source. All right, thanks. Be well.
Thank you.